Hey, everybody, this is Nathaniel Provencio. I'm solo today. I'm in Fresno, California, so I'm not at my home, but I have with me today Mike, the freaking principal, out of out of outside of Disney World, Orlando. What's up, Mike? How you doing, man?
I'm good, Nate. How's it going, man? You doing all right?
It's okay. I'm a little jet lagged, flying from Washington, D.C. to
Yep.
I don't know, DFW and then to Fresno, California. It takes a lot out of you. So I've been up since like 4:30 this morning, amped up, ready to roll. And so I know I'm going to be crashing at some point. So I think I'm okay. I got some coffee in me and hydrated. So I think I'm ready to go, man. How was your day in Orlando, brother? How was your day?
Good. Orlando's a little chilly. Has been a little chilly for us here in Florida, but I can't complain. I'm a Boston native originally, so I
Oh,
moved away to get away from the bitter cold. So I don't really complain too often. So it's been a good day. But I know the West Coast travel. I know it well, and it'll get you every time.
so I this connection is a social media connection on this show,
Yeah.
and
Yep.
I'm still learning. I'm a neophyte when it comes to social media. I'm not an expert like you, man. And then even the other day, my kids were like, "Dad, you need to get on TikTok," and I was just like, TikTok's for like teens. What's going
Yeah.
on? I'm like a Facebook Gen Xer,
Yep.
and so I'm doing this podcast and I upload all the different episodes and different little shorts on Instagram. I'm trying to figure out, and I usually like average like 3 views. My mom, my kids, and my wife, maybe 4 views from whoever the person was. And I'm like, man, what am I doing wrong over here? So my kids were like, you got to get on TikTok. And my wife was like, yeah, you got to get on TikTok. I'm like, all
Yep.
right. So she starts a TikTok page of just her cat, just holding her cat. And like in one day, she gets like
Blows up.
5,000 views on
It's
it
crazy.
blows up just from some cat. I'm like, I'm over here talking about like culture and
We're changing the world,
assessments and
man.
like
We're changing the
professional
world. And yeah,
changing the world, and I get like 3 views, and she gets like 5,000 from a cat. So I
yeah,
got so you do a great job with this, man. So before we get into the hard stuff, let's talk about the
yeah,
social media stuff. Tell me
sure.
about your foray into social media, man, and because you're crushing it.
Yeah, to be honest with you, it started when I was a school leader. I did a lot of turnaround work as a high school principal,
Mm,
and one of the things that I talk with leaders across the country is that if you don't tell your story, someone else will. And
yeah,
we found out early on that that social media is a great way to tell your story. We the schools that I led, we were being judged by our state accountability system. Well, that tells like a little
mm,
bit of the picture, man. There were incredible
yeah,
things that were happening on our campus. We tapped social media to be able to tell those stories.
I agree.
That's where we were able to magnify and start to build a coalition that was supportive of our work on our campus. So that's really, it came out of a necessity. I
Yeah,
had to get good at it, and I had to get good at it relatively quick. And there's incredible models and examples
hmm,
of people doing incredible work and magnifying their voice through the use of social media. It started when Twitter, now X, but it started with Twitter and
yeah,
just attending conferences and just adding to the conversation. Because there's a lot of hype around, like, it's people sharing their cat videos but if you know how to
yeah,
sort through
right.
the content, man, you can find some incredible content that will magnify your work and
Yeah.
help you make impact at scale. So that's where it started. And then I have a lot to say, man. I'm incredibly passionate about this work.
I love it.
I think that there's a lot of need for shifts in how we do specifically public education in the United States, and I have a lot to say about it. So I found it to be a really good platform for that as well.
Yeah, I love it, man. I like it for the connections, right? I mean,
Yeah.
like I'm always learning from people, and whether I know them or not. And I follow people, and that's how I started following you. It's just like this
Yep.
guy's got a lot of really cool insights. But you said something
Yeah.
right now that really resonates with me. If our school leaders don't tell our story, someone else or something else will. And you're absolutely right. So in
100%.
Florida, you got these grades, man, right? I mean, I
Yep.
still can't,
Yep.
God, I still to the life of me cannot
Yep.
figure this out because there's no F school, right? I mean, that just, and like A schools, what does that mean? You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
So you get a letter grade that's a snapshot in time. Your whole
Yep.
school is graded by this. And yeah, that becomes the perception becomes reality for people that don't know. I've
Correct.
never been a fan of greatschools.org or some of these other kind of like online platforms that gives your that aggregates your school's
Boost you
data,
up.
pulls it
Yep.
up.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting about that because if you look at the history of some of those websites, a lot of them are funded by, I mean, it is what it is, Heritage Foundation or other
Sure.
kinds of conservative platforms that
Yep.
aren't necessarily pro public school.
Right.
And then
Right.
if I'm a family, my family's moving to Central Florida and we're looking for a school, we go to Zillow.com and right there it
You
has
got it.
this, it's got the schools, and
Yep.
it won't say that, Washington Elementary scores better than 50% of the other schools. It'll
Right.
say Washington Elementary scores 50% worse than the other schools.
Yep.
And if you just dig through that, someone else is branding your excellence.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so, and school leaders with all the just the stuff that we have on our plate, we're not trained for that. We don't know. There was no branding your school, master's level
No.
class or anything like
No.
that. So you just got to
Yeah.
learn.
They did not teach you that at principal school. And I will tell you that, if we lead schools in a day and age where we control our narrative. And
Mhm.
if you're not happy with the story that's being told about your school, you have complete control over that story if you know the tools and resources to be able to be able to impact that. And there's leaders like myself, and there's other folks out there doing that work, showing you the way of how you can take control of that narrative,
Yeah.
because it's a really important point. Particularly, the conversation is most likely only going to ramp up nationwide about school choice, and Florida's the leader,
Yeah.
so-called leader in school choice. You need to be a marketer, right? Like, you need to be able to market your content and the things that you're doing. If your marching band is dynamite, you need to tell their story. If you have
That's
an
right.
incredible arts program, you need to tell their story. If your career and technical education programs are doing unbelievable stuff, tell their story.
Yeah.
And social media is a great way to be able to do that.
I agree. And I think what happens is when you start sharing all of those positive moments that are happening because there's these great things are happening every day in our
Every
schools.
school. Yep.
Every school's got amazing things that's happening. And especially if you're leveraging and taking the time to be able to do that. Um, Someone who is in that prep program, someone's at that university in Central Florida, right? Someone is
Yep.
gonna tag on to that and be like, damn, I want to work there.
Right.
And if you're recruiting, so it's not just like you're branding your excellence for your
No.
community, you're saying, hey, this is what we're about. This is what we're putting out there for everybody. And that might be the difference between the best candidate and the not so best candidate. It's just seeing that one little post, right?
Yeah, 100%. That's actually how we started to win some candidates, right? In a school where, when I took over, we weren't filling vacancies. We would, when we called you for an interview, before we hung up the phone, we told you to, here's our handle. Go
Yep.
check out our social media, because it gives you a glimpse into what you're getting at on our campus and what our culture is about. So
Yep.
we won candidates that way, by putting that out there, right? Like, showing the incredible things that are happening on campus. You can't look at autopsy data that is snapped by the state accountability system one time
Mhm.
out of the
One
year
time. That's
and
right.
make a judgment, right? Like, sure, we have challenges, absolutely, but did dynamite things happen on campus every day? 100%, and we were going to tell
Yeah.
those stories.
Yeah. And and I would, okay, this is going to be a controversial statement. I'm just putting it out there, listeners.
I'm
This is
all
a
about it. Let's do
controversial
it.
statement. I would, oh, this is a tough one. All right, this is a tough one. I would much rather a principal take one morning each week, and instead of being valet service, think about ways to market and brand their excellence. Like that's a controversial statement, right? Because like I there is there's a there's a lot of things to do for a principal, and there's not a lot of time to do it. But like, let's say we get into like November, I think you've met your parents in the parking lot. I think they know the routine. You don't have to be out there 5 days a week, morning and the afternoon, in order to kind of make that impression. There might be something else that you can do, and that, let's just say 30 minutes to be able to
Yeah.
highlight the teams that are kicking butt, right? Highlight students that are kicking butt,
Yep.
highlight families that are kicking butt, highlight your custodians through social
Yep.
media. To me, Mike, that's a better investment than like opening and closing doors for, I mean, I know it's important, controversial
Yeah.
statement, but we get to choose what we do with our time, and branding
But
is that.
but it doesn't even need to be controversial, right? Like you could hypothetically, you could, why not? What's stopping you from running a Facebook Live at Car Rider Line, right? Like throw up the Facebook Live, man. Show them what it's all about, how you're welcoming kids on campus. You can do both at the same time. Like
That's a good point.
Make it an event. Like
I love it.
do that live stream. Highlight your folks who are coming onto campus, the families who are getting their kids. We talk about chronic absenteeism all the time. Call them out.
We're here.
Like,
Where the hell are you,
the
parents?
families
Let's
that
go.
are here on time, man, that are not stuck in traffic. Like celebrate the hell out of that.
Brilliant.
That's
brilliant.
That's what it's all about, man.
That's brilliant. So I worked in a very, when I was a principal, man, I worked with it was a great area that I worked in, Northern Virginia. My buddy Eric, who's not in us, he's still over there. And we had some fantastic principals.
Yeah.
And there were principals that were extroverts. I worked with this cat. I'm going to try to get him on my show. He was outstanding. His name was Hamish Brewer, man.
Hamish.
Oh, Hamish, man,
Yeah.
outstanding. Like that guy is like just rocket fuel from like New Zealand, right? I mean,
as extrovert as they get. Yeah.
He is as extra freaking vert. I mean, he's got like cats all over him. He does the haka, and he rides skateboards. He's a unicorn. He is not all of us are going to skateboard. Not all of us can get, facial tattoos. We're not going to jump. We're not going to be Ron Clarks, and we can't do all those things, right?
Yeah.
I wish we could, right? But it's just not in our DNA. I'm more of an introverted principal, believe it or not. What would you say to those principals out there that maybe don't feel comfortable? It's just not them, but they still know the importance of getting their message out. What would you say to those folks?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I'm actually not an extrovert. I don't come wired that way. I need to work at it, right? But I would also say you don't have to be the face of the work, right? Like you can magnify and lift up the voice or the faces of those who are on your campus. You don't have you can lead that work. You can be behind the camera, but there's nothing to stop you from snapping a photo every single time you go into a classroom to highlight some of the incredible things. And don't just say like add like quality context to it. Don't just say like great things happening at Smith Elementary. Okay, cool. Right. Like tell them what's going on in your third grade classroom. Like, why are these kids digging deep? Why is deeper learning important? How are they tackling inquiry? Go to a collaborative team meeting or a professional learning community and tell the world how hard it is to be a teacher in today's society, and the time that they're not just hanging out drinking coffee on their planning periods, man. They're in here trying to figure out how to take kids deeper in their learning. But you don't have to be the face of that. Like you can just highlight that. You just lead that work, right? You still tell that story. You control that narrative, and you can do it from behind the camera as well. So I think if you're an introvert principal, there's absolutely nothing stopping you from tackling that anyway, at least to start, right? And then you slowly build up to, maybe saying some things and script it out, like interact with AI. Like you could have AI spit you out a script in 2 seconds to target some of the things that you want to talk about. It's not difficult.
I love it. And for every principal that's not good at that stuff, there's about 30 teachers that are freaking excellent at it.
100%.
And there's parents, absolutely. And there's kids that are excellent at it. Make these your you're brand ambassadors through social media.
100%. We used to do social media takeovers for some of our seniors where they would take over social media. We'd go through all of our, obviously, our permission structure to make sure
Yeah,
everything was good. But we would let our seniors, and we'd do the editing behind the scenes, but we would take care of all the stuff and let them have a takeover for a day. What's a day in the life of a senior
love
in
it.
high school? Because that's how you build the brand.
I love it, man. We've had a lot of some excellent conversations on the podcast about vision and mission.
Yeah,
I'm a sucker for vision and mission conversation. I could talk about it for hours. I think most schools
got to know
screw
where
it
you're
up.
going.
Yeah,
Yep.
I just think most schools and most leaders have no idea how to talk about vision and mission, um, or they do. It's just so superficial, or just whatever. I think that if a school leader wants to start really talking about culture, they got to talk about what their purpose is and what sets that school apart from
Yep.
everywhere else. And for me, your vision is where you want to be. It frames the future. Your mission kind of outlines how you're going to get there. You got to communicate that, and you got to make sure you also double down on those collective commitments, and everyone's got to
Yep.
understand it, and you got to sustain it. But then you got to do that every single day in order to
Gotta
kind of
live it.
codify your school culture. So talk a little bit about vision and mission, man, because that's, to me, that's just like foundational work for school
Yeah.
culture.
Yeah. So you know, some of the things that drive me crazy in education is we overcomplicate everything, right? And
Absolutely.
it's been the nature of the beast. So it is what it is. And I think mission and vision can be one of those things that becomes really overcomplicated. And I think we need to keep it as simple as you possibly can, right? Like
Yeah.
people should be able to know your mission and be able to say it and know it at a deep level because
Hmm.
it's that simple. It
Yeah.
it it becomes your DNA. It's what you're about. It's what you do. It becomes the way of work, and you
Hmm.
keep it simple. And I think we sometimes we overcomplicate these things, Nathaniel, and make them just more than they need to be. I needed
Yeah, I
to
agree.
talk about what we're about and make sure that it's so simple that if you ask a kid on our campus, they don't know it because we want them to know their mission because it feels good when you ask a kid your mission and they can rattle it off. It's because that's the way of life on campus.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
that's what we do. It's who we are. Those are the things that matter, you know?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
when we did mission and vision work, we tried to keep it as simple as possible and really focus on what we're engaged in. For us, it was building a culture of no excuses.
Mm.
um, our campus had made excuse after excuse for why we could not succeed, so we stopped.
Mm.
Every kid knew that it was about building a culture of no excuses and that we were going to bring solutions to everything that we encountered on our campus, and it became a way of life. It was our way, and that's all of our collective commitments, all the way of work. It aligned with that mentality.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Yeah, and I'll say this all the time. It's like it's only when a principal is sick and tired of saying their vision and mission when the staff will actually start to listen
That's
to
right.
what that vision. I do this all the time when I do my consulting work. I just say, all
Yep.
right, turn to your partner right now and tell what your vision and mission is. I don't know. Let me look it up. I'm like, all right, well, that's
Right.
your culture. That's your culture. I was
Absolutely. And it's more than what's on the paper too, right?
oh,
Like
absolutely.
like the coming back to your why has been like that's been the thing for
Yeah,
since Simon Sinek video came out and we talked about the golden circle. Everybody
yeah,
wants to talk about the why, which is
yeah,
great. You absolutely need to know why you do the work, but you need to be grounded in that. It needs to not be something that you just like have to rattle off because somebody at professional learning told you to. It's something
yeah,
that like you need to feel and
yeah.
and be about, and that's where things start to line up when you get that figured out and you're able to know those things and feel it and live it every day on campus. That's the differentiator, man. That's when you can really hit your stride.
Do you uh do you like hamburgers?
Love them.
Okay, okay. All right. So bear with me here. All right.
Yeah.
I promise this is on point with our conversation. I freaking love hamburgers. Love them, love them. I'm like Wimpy from Popeye. Like I just a hamburger day. Like I love it. And so I like a lot of food. Barbecue is another big one. But hamburgers are very interesting. And I'm gonna tell you why. So you can go to any place in America and get a hamburger, but like there's this company called Five Guys. You know what? You ever been to a Five Guys restaurant, Mike?
I have.
Okay, you walk into a Five Guys, and as soon as you walk in, I mean, in any Five Guys, right? And I think Five Guys is a hell of a lot better than In-N-Out Burger. I'm just saying, I'm calling it out right now.
Careful, you're on the
Little,
West Coast, man.
I
Careful.
don't care, man. I'm bold. I'm bold with this. But you go into a Five Guys, and when you will look around, you see all of these touch points of their school culture or their culture, their restaurant culture.
Yep.
All the magazines that they've been in, all the awards that they've received, and it's usually regional too. It's kind of cool. And
It
so,
is.
like,
Yep.
I remember like thinking about that for school, just like a freaking hamburger place celebrates everything that they do that they're great at. You walk in, and I think the technical term is touch points, right? You can see all
Yep.
these magazines and these awards, but you go into a school and what do you see? You don't see anything.
Nope.
And like
They're
we can
controlling
learn
the narrative 100%, man.
they're controlling
they're controlling the
absolutely.
narrative.
You control the
Yep.
narrative. And and it's just fascinating that businesses have this stuff figured out because they had to survive.
Yep.
And I get it, the big debate between charter schools and private schools in Florida, you said, is like the number one. So what I tell people all the time is maybe it's a wake-up call, Mike. I don't know. Maybe it's a wake-up call, because if you've got the charter school of excellence, the creme de la creme, going to open up across the street, and they're doing those things that are attracting clientele, and you have it, and you knew to do that all along, but you didn't, and you lose customers. No, man. It's like, what do you get?
Yeah, and you're going, that's the reality. Like that is absolutely what's going to happen. I remember the day that I asked my leadership team to find out how many kids were choosing to go to other schools that belong to us in our zone. And I was leading a comprehensive high school. I had about 2,200 kids. We had about 400 kids, Nathaniel, that were going elsewhere. They were choosing to go elsewhere.
Yeah.
And they were well within their right at that point in time, right?
Sure.
Like, so one of our goals became, we're going to claim those kids back. Like, we need to give them a reason to want to come to our campus. I wrote an article a while back about, teachers do this all the time. It's the age old adage of like, kid asks a question like, why do I need to know this? And well, you're going to need to know it someday. And our kids don't operate that way anymore, man. They want to know, like, what is in it for them right now. To be honest with you, that's the right question to ask. Like, how are we engaging kids? What opportunities are we providing for them? PK through 20 that impacts them right now, that is going to feed them in the future. Because if we can't answer that question, we're going to get it. We're going to get it wrong. And so many schools are not trying they're not trying to answer those types of questions. Like, what is the purpose of school? My current work now with NCE, like we ask a lot of those questions. Like, what is the purpose of our current systems? And we have to figure those answers out for sure.
Yeah, man, I agree 1,000%. I tell business as usual cannot be business as usual anymore.
No.
And so if there's anything that is a positive outgrowth of some of this kind of like new dynamic about, the charters and the vouchers and everything, maybe it's a wake-up call. And I will always put a public school educator, public school principal, that against a private school any day. Like I'm not, but we do this to ourselves, and it's not just a principal's problem. No. It's systemic. It's bigger than that. And Mike, it's so interesting. I go into so many schools with brand new leaders, and I sit there and I'm coaching them and I'm working with them, and they have their radio right next to them. You know what I mean? They have their walkie-talkie right next to them. And I just crack up, man, because every time that radio goes off, generally speaking,
Yeah.
man, they like, it's like a fire, bro.
Yeah.
It's just like,
Yeah.
boom, it's just loud. And I'm
Yeah.
like, where did he go? And it's like, oh, it's
Firefighting.
the kids on the run, or principal's here. And I'm like, does anyone ever like call in on the radio and say, hey, we got these essential standards we need unpacked, or like, hey, we got some questions about this assessment principle, we need stat, we need you to help
Uh-huh.
out over there. And then I think about like okay, that's the culture. Because
Yep.
as the teachers see the principal, the head, right, react to everything, and not and chasing things that are urgent but not necessary, it speaks to that culture. So why do we
Does.
as a school team have to sit and talk about our data? Why do we have a school team have to talk about essential standards? Why do we as a school team have to create an assessment or differentiate? If it's not important to our principal, why should it be important to us? So
Right.
without even thinking about it, it creates a reactionary culture.
Yep.
And I get it, it's not anyone's fault, but like sometimes culture equates to leadership. And that's a question that I want to have for you, right? Is is there a difference between culture and leadership? Are they synonymous? Can you have a strong culture or have a weak leader? Can you have a strong leader and have a weak culture? This is an interesting question, and I wanted to
Yeah.
pose that for you, man. What are your thoughts on that?
You won't, you could walk into a strong culture, but it won't last. It will not continue to be strong if you have a
Yeah,
weak leader in the building.
yeah, man.
They can, a leader can do damage to a culture very quickly.
Very
And
quickly.
some of we have, I think, the challenge with public schools, and I think some of the perception in the public today around public schooling is that, for so long kids were zoned to come to us, and we kind of took that for granted, right?
Right.
Like it it shouldn't be that way anyway. Like
Mm,
there's some real positives to the school choice movement. Like it gives kids opportunities to go do some really cool career and technical education programs, or something, that is niche that might be at one school versus the other.
yeah.
But schools can't just take for granted kids are just going to come to their school because they're zoned for them. Like you have to be, that's the wrong question. Like that's the wrong problem to be tackling. You have to be saying like,
Right.
how can we make this the greatest friggin' school on earth
It's right.
that no kid and their families ever gonna not want to come here? Like they
Yeah.
want to walk through our doors. Like that's how dynamite our instruction should be about. And it shouldn't be about putting out fires. Like, dude, I should be all over my tier one. Like,
That's right.
how can I make my core instruction incredible? Because you know what happens when you create a relevant, engaging tier one curriculum, some of those fires that you are chasing,
You just take care
they
of yourself.
go, they
They
go
go
away,
away.
man.
They go
They
away,
go
bro.
away. So it's just about refocusing. But to answer your question, man, no, a leader will kill a culture, even if it's strong, very quickly. And you're going to lose a lot of people in the wake.
Yeah. I'm a big Washington Commanders fan. Like
Oh,
I've
I'm
moved.
sorry, man. I'm
I
sorry. I was
know,
rooting
right?
for him. I
I
was rooting
know,
for him.
right? Who's your team though? Who's your you got an NFL
So
team as well?
I grew up in New England, so the Patriots. But so I understand how people felt about us
Yeah.
now watching Kansas City. So yeah, it's
Oh
tough.
yeah. So it's interesting how one year now the Washington Commanders have had a fantastic
Yep.
football culture for years, right? Especially in the early 80s, the mid 80s, 90s. Fantastic. They get a new owner, and for 25 years it's just a freaking toxic disaster.
Yeah.
Last year they get a new ownership team coming in, right? And it's amazing what happens. So the culture is there, but if it's strong, it'll there's some elasticity to a strong culture,
Yeah.
but it's like a rubber band. It can't sustain
No.
it if the leader's not there. I mean, Patriot way, man. It's like Belichick culture,
Patriot
Belichick.
way, man.
What's
Yep.
going on,
And
or is it the Belichick way? I don't
yeah,
know. I don't
yeah.
know.
I mean, I
It's interesting.
mean, yeah, it's an interesting question, Nathaniel. What I think it points to is there's so many good places for us to find examples of
Yeah.
incredible cultures, whether it's Five Guys, whether it's, um, whether it's Apple, whether it's like,
Yeah.
if you look at you can take so many lessons from those playbooks. I'm a big, obviously, like I living close to Disney World. Like
Yeah.
I love the books about, Walt Disney Company and Ride of a Lifetime, Bob Iger. Like those
Sure.
are incredible examples of how you can really build incredible systems and lead and build a culture, because without a culture, nothing else matters.
Yeah.
That's it's about culture and systems,
Yeah,
and
man.
good systems can't live in a bad culture. So if you don't get your culture systems right, and new principles, you talked about working with new principles, that's
Yeah.
typically not their focus, and they're
No.
gonna they're gonna
Survival.
learn. Yeah, but dude,
You know?
you're gonna learn real quick that you're gonna stay in
Oh,
survival mode because you don't get your culture right.
absolutely. And I think it's like, look, it's hard, but you got to choose your hard. It's going to be either hard now or really hard later when
Yep.
it comes to addressing these types of things. And I just wish, man, and if anyone's listening to this, district folks that are training or leadership prep, um, invest in instructional leadership, invest in having your
Yep.
school leaders be true CEOs, chief educational officers, man.
Yep.
And I think that's
Love
crazy.
that.
Now you do a lot of work with, and this is another connection. We're both Solution Tree
Yep.
associates. I didn't
Yep.
realize that till we started talking, man.
Yeah.
And you do a lot of work with Anthony Muhammad and transforming school culture. What are some of the big, I don't know, lessons or things to really leverage from that work with, transforming school cultures? I'd love to know a little bit of, because that's a fantastic book. Anthony's phenomenal in that, and
Yeah.
you're part of that team, so I'd like to know a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think I think it's that idea, right? That so often leaders come in and they try to, worry about essential standards or taking
Right, yeah,
kids deeper, or getting all these things right, checking the boxes, which fall under, it's so much of a compliance task.
sure, sure,
And if your people, and I'm talking about all your people, from the people that drive the buses that deliver your kids to campus every day, from your cafeteria workers to your custodial staff to your instructional staff to your front office staff, dude, if they don't want to be there
yeah,
every day, it all those things
doesn't
are for
matter.
naught. It's
Hmm.
like anytime I talk with new teachers, right? Like content doesn't matter if you can't manage the space. Like you're
Mm-hmm.
not gonna, no one's gonna hear what you have to say.
Yeah,
It's the same thing. So it's getting those cultural pieces right, talking with your people and listening, actively and genuinely listening,
yeah,
and valuing their input. Those things all really matter, and how you build that culture is going to impact everything else that you do on that campus. A lot of people do it the other way around, like
mm,
school improvement work, like some of the turnaround work that I've been involved with. I'll go into schools and districts in my work with NCE. We'll go in, and a lot of times they're so focused on trying to get all those things right, like those compliancy
sure,
items
sure,
done, but those are not those things. It doesn't matter. Those things are gonna disappear very quickly if you
yeah.
don't have a strong culture to be able to support that work.
Mm,
It's all for naught.
mm. I was um I was in a school one time, and it was pretty early on one of my travels and one of my trips, and no one was there in the front office, and there was a custodian that I walked up to because I was like, no one else was there to greet me or talk
Yep.
to or whatever, and so I was chatting with the custodian, and I said, what do you do like in the morning, like what are your duties? And the custodian said, well, I got to clean the bathrooms. I got to make sure the trash is done. I got to do these things. I got to make sure that there's enough trash bags in the room. And, that's kind of what I do every single day. And I was like, okay, cool. Um, Couple hours later, towards the end of the day, do my training, do my consulting. And then I'm walking out and I see a different custodian. And I went up to that custodian and I said, hey, it's The school looks good, like what are you doing right now? And she looked at me and she said, I'm building a school of excellence. And that's all she said. And I was like, holy crap.
Yeah.
That's a freaking answer right there. This is coming from a custodian, right? And
Everybody
and I
all
was
in,
just like, why can't everyone say what she just said?
all in, man.
All in,
Yep.
right? So like it's, and I that really resonated with me. Like when everyone knows, and matter of fact, their vision statement was that, something like sustaining a school of excellence or something like that.
Yeah.
And it's like she's got it. She's got it. And I shared that with the principal, and she was like, what's going on? So both of the classified staff, they were right. They both answered the question right. But one had a purpose, the other had a paycheck. And
Yeah.
and I
Those
and I
are
think
those are
that
two very different things.
very different things. And I tell the people all the time, there's three types of educators you're going to have in your school. You're going to have paycheck educators, you're going to have passionate educators, and you're going to have purpose-driven educators.
Yep.
Purpose-driven educators want to work for a purpose, a calling bigger than themselves. Passionate educators love the job, love the craft, but they aren't as invested as maybe as they could be. Yep. Or should be. Good people. And then you got the paycheck people that are just there, boom, 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 right? And every organization has those three types of people. But if you're a purpose-driven leader, purpose-driven teachers want to work for the purpose-driven leaders. And purpose-driven teachers don't like paycheck people. And paycheck people sure as hell don't like purpose-driven people. And so yeah, man. So anyway, so culture is so much about the people that you bring in, and their interpretation of the excellence that you're trying to sustain.
It's an incredibly important point that, your people are not leaving a job. When you're losing teachers, they're leaving you.
Yeah, and, exactly. Gallup says most people, don't leave the profession, they leave people. Yeah.
They're leaving you. And you should take it personal. You should want to know why. You should take it a little bit personal. Like that's your baby, that's your school. And a lot of people, I think, they have that mentality that will just replace them. And the reality of the matter is, like, I can name the rock star teachers that I lost for a reason or another. Yeah. That I owned, that were ultimately on me. I can name those people because I'm wounded by that, right? Like
it keeps you up at night.
Absolutely, man. Like that, man. That stuff is, and I think that's important. And leaders need to have that mindset because that's what we're talking about.
Mike, I always used to get annoyed. I did some time as an associate superintendent, and I would have conversations with HR about exit surveys.
Yep.
And I was always annoyed by that, about exit surveys, about the people that were leaving. They would be like, oh, we've got this data about all the teachers that are leaving. We have their exit surveys. And I would always think to myself, I'd say, if we're waiting to know about people's input and feelings about our school after they've quit on their way out, what the hell were we doing the whole other time? Like, if we're surprised by exit data, that's shocking. And
right. Like we absolutely can't. That's such an important point. I used to provide, we call them pulse checks.
Yeah.
To my staff all the time, where it was basically, an online, Dropbox. Like, tell me where you're at. Like, where are you thinking? What's your mental health like?
Yeah. Man.
Are you taking care of yourself? Like, even Zoom's giving a thumbs up.
Yeah, so look at that.
It those things are like, why would you wait if you can't shift at that point?
It's autopsy data, man.
It's autopsy data 100%, man. And those, and you know what's crazy about that, Nathaniel? It costs nothing to do that, to make that shift right there. It costs you nothing to do. And and yet school leaders are not taking advantage of those types of things. That's the mindset that is critical to building the
Yeah.
cultures that we've been talking about in this episode.
So if Mike, the principal, were in charge, right? Mike, you are now in charge of all school culture work in America, right?
Yeah,
What would
yeah,
be the three things? What would be the three things? It's funny. I got this book over here. I travel with it because I'm a dork like that. But it's Shaping School Culture by none other than Bill Bowman and Dill, right? Dill and
yeah,
Peter. I carry it
yep,
around because it's small and I always looking around to it. So if you were going to help all principals transform school culture, what are three things they can do tomorrow to immediately help change the narrative about, going from toxic to terrific? What would those three
yeah.
things be, man?
Yeah, so I think the first thing you need to do is some sort of pre-assessment, if you will, right? Like to take a pulse of where your people are at. Um, and I think that comes in a variety of different ways. You can use an online survey. You can go and informally talk with people. You can do one-on-ones. You can meet with teams, but you have to talk to everybody on your campus, and not just teachers. Like, you have to talk to your front office staff.
That's right.
You need to watch all the things, right? Like, we used to, we go in and we do culture audits when we're working with new districts and new schools, and we'd watch everything. How you answer phones matters. How you answer emails and how quickly matters. How they're greeted in the guidance office matters. When a parent needs enrollment, like if they have a question and you turn them away, like all those things matter. So I think some sort of just assessment or audit of where you're at is the first step. And then I think you match those findings, right? Like, you need to look at what the data says, even though it's not going to be quantitative, it's going to be qualitative, but you need to look at what the data says, and you need to start matching to your systems. And you need to make sure that you have systems to be able to support either the things that are going well, actually both the things that are going well and the things that need additional support. Like, you have to make sure the systems are there. And then the third piece is you can't set it and forget it. You build a system, you have to come back to that system and make sure that it is constantly working. I used to tell my assistant principals all the time, if you find yourself answering the same question over and over again, either one of two things has happened. Either you have no system at all, or your system is not communicated effectively, period. And that's what we need to be doing. So we need to figure out where we're at, take a pulse check of your culture, of your climate. Then you need to figure out, do you have systems in place that align to those things? And then continue to follow up on those pieces. Those are the three things that I would put in play.
That's good, man. That's some good data, man. That's some good work. Mike, the principal, what an honor, man, chatting with you, bro.
Dude, thank you, Nate. I appreciate it, man. I appreciate you taking some time.
I'm gonna try to get to Orlando, try to get to little Disney World, man. And you and I gotta go to Five Guys together. So
yes, we'll go to Five Guys, man. I love it. Sounds awesome. I love it.
Where can people find you, bro? Where can people find you?
Yeah, so the best place to connect with me is online. It's going to be in my Instagram channel. That's probably where I'm most active. And that's at Mike the Principal on Instagram. They can go to MikeMeechin.com. I'm in the process of refreshing that website, but you can definitely subscribe. I read a weekly email newsletter called the Progress Report. So you can check in with me there. So you can subscribe at MikeMeechin.com, and you can follow me on Instagram at Mike the Principal.
So, hey guys, thank you very much, Mike. What an honor to be chatting with you, man. School culture, man. It's just huge. Thank you very much for sharing your passion and your energy, and keep sharing all that stuff on social media, man. It's outstanding. And maybe we'll start like I don't know, our own cat blog or something. I don't know too.
There you go, man.